The date is June 2nd, 1987. The air in Buffalo, New York is thick with anticipation. A humid summer evening inside the Memorial Auditorium, crackling with an electricity only professional wrestling can generate. Tonight, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, the embodiment of honor and athleticism, puts his coveted Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship on the line. His opponent is the Honky Tonk Man, a swivel-hipped, sneering caricature of Elvis Presley, managed by the ever-obnoxious Jimmy Hart. Fans despise him. Every hip shake, every arrogant strum of his guitar, every exaggerated lip curl sends a fresh wave of boos crashing down from the rafters. He is a villain, pure and unadulterated, yet there's a perverse fascination with his audacious arrogance. The bell rings and the dragon, a whirlwind of martial arts precision, dominates the early going, his chops echoing through the arena. Honky, true to form, is a master of evasion, a slippery eel in sequined jumpsuits. The crowd roars as Steamboat finally catches him, setting up for his signature diving crossbody. But then a moment of opportunistic genius, or perhaps pure, unadulterated luck. As Steamboat attempts an inside cradle, Honky reverses it, deftly grabbing the bottom rope out of the referee's sight for extra leverage and somehow secures the 3 count. The collective gasp from the crowd is palpable, quickly erupting into a cacophony of enraged boos. The Honky Tonk Man, the man everyone loved to hate, the temporary placeholder, had done the impossible. He had captured the Intercontinental Championship. Absolutely no one, not the fans, not the commentators, and certainly not the World Wrestling Federation itself, expected this to last. They anticipated a brief, transitional reign, a fleeting moment of infamy before a proper champion took the reins. What they got instead was a hostage crisis. For a staggering 454 days, the Honky Tonk Man held that Intercontinental Championship, a record that stood for over 30 years, only recently surpassed. To truly understand this audacious act, we need to rewind to the origins of this unique villain. Roy Wayne Farris, the man behind the slicked-back hair and sequined jumpsuits, began his wrestling journey in the late 1970s, honing his craft across various territories. He found his initial spark in Stampede Wrestling, a Canadian promotion where the Honky Tonk Wayne gimmick first began to take shape, an Elvis-inspired character with a guitar and an attitude. He captured titles there, demonstrating his capability, but it was his arrival in the World Wrestling Federation in July 1986 that would etch his name into the annals of wrestling history. Initially, the Federation positioned him as a clean-cut, fan-favorite Elvis impersonator. Hulk Hogan himself, the biggest star in the company, even endorsed him. But the reception from the audience was lukewarm at best, hostile at worst. It was clear this wasn't working. The fans weren't buying the wholesome Elvis act. Recognizing this disconnect, the Federation, with a subtle nod from Honky himself, pivoted. And just like that, the Honky Tonk Man fully embraced his destiny as a villain, adopting the notorious Mouth of the South Jimmy Hart as his manager, completing his transformation into one of the most detestable characters in the Federation. His first significant feud as a villain cemented his newfound heel status against the immensely popular Jake the Snake Roberts. This rivalry was characterized by a now legendary incident on Roberts' talk show segment, The Snake Pit, where Honky smashed his guitar across Roberts' skull, blurring the line between storyline and assault. The angle solidified Honky's malicious intent and escalated the animosity towards him. Their feud culminated at WrestleMania 3, where Honky secured a tainted victory by grabbing the ropes for leverage, a precursor to his future championship tactics. Following WrestleMania 3, Honky Tonk Man's trajectory seemed to be that of a solid mid-card heel, designed to elevate fan favorites. Then came June 2nd, 1987. Butch Reed, who was originally slated to win the Intercontinental Championship, was a no-show. The Federation needed someone to fill the void, a temporary champion to hold the belt until a more credible wrestler was ready to assume the title. The Honky Tonk Man, readily available and generating significant heat, was thrust into the role. He was meant to drop the title quickly, a transitional champion in the truest sense. This assumption would prove to be the Federation's first monumental mistake. The World Wrestling Federation's championship rules were clear. A title could only change hands via pinfall or submission. This seemingly simple rule became Honky Tonk Man's weapon and loophole. While other champions fought to dominate and win decisively, Honky fought to simply not lose. He perfected the art of the intentional count-out or disqualification, facing challengers like Ricky Steamboat in rematches, Billy Jack Haynes, Bruno Sammartino, or the unhinged George the Animal Steele. Honky would strategically slide out of the ring, remaining outside until the referee counted to 10, losing the match but retaining the title. Or he would orchestrate a blatant interference from Jimmy Hart or the Hart Foundation, drawing a disqualification and saving his championship. It was infuriating for the fans, maddening for his opponents, and a growing headache for Federation management. But it worked. The crowds hated him more with every escape, every cheap retention, and that hatred translated into money. As the weeks stretched into months, Honky's reign, originally conceived as a brief interlude, began to take on a life of its own. By September 1987, Macho Man Randy Savage, in the midst of a fan-favorite turn, set his sights on the Intercontinental Championship. Honky, ever the provocateur, began making disparaging comments about former champions, particularly Savage, further fueling the rivalry. Their feud culminated in a high-profile match on Saturday night's main event. The match itself was a masterclass in heel tactics, with the Hart Foundation interfering repeatedly, leading to a disqualification. But it was Honky's actions after the bell that truly lit the fuse. He shoved Miss Elizabeth, Savage's manager, who had tried to intervene, and then attempted to smash his guitar over Savage's head. This audacious act brought out Hulk Hogan, leading to the formation of the iconic Mega Powers. But it also cemented Honky's position as a universally reviled figure. The animosity continued, with Honky frequently making lewd advances toward Miss Elizabeth, further enraging Savage and the fans. Their final high-profile encounter, on the main event in early 1988, saw Honky again lose by count-out. This feud proved that Honky, despite his unconventional tactics, could draw massive heat and sell tickets. He had made himself too valuable to lose in the eyes of Vince McMahon, even if his methods were causing backstage friction. The constant avoidance tactics and the refusal to lose cleanly began to grate on everyone. Other wrestlers in the locker room, particularly those who were supposed to be next in line for the Intercontinental Championship, grew increasingly frustrated. Randy Savage was eventually elevated to the Federation Championship, but others like Brutus the Barber Beefcake were next in line to challenge Honky. The Beefcake-Honky feud began at WrestleMania 4, where once again Honky retained his title via disqualification after Jimmy Hart interfered. Beefcake, known for his shears, vowed to cut Honky's signature ducktail hair. This was a classic good versus evil storyline, and the anticipation for Beefcake finally getting his hands on Honky was immense. As SummerSlam 1988 approached, the stage was set for Beefcake to finally dethrone Honky. It was billed as Beefcake's last shot at the title. However, behind the scenes, a power struggle was brewing. The legendary backstage scuttlebutt, which has been corroborated by Honky himself in interviews, suggests that he refused to drop the title to Beefcake. The rumors swirled that he threatened to walk out on the company if he was forced to lose cleanly. This was no idle threat. At the time, World Championship Wrestling, backed by Ted Turner's immense wealth, was actively trying to lure top talent away from the Federation. Losing a reigning champion, even one as reviled as Honky, to a rival promotion would have been a catastrophic blow to Vince McMahon and the Federation credibility. Vince McMahon was caught in a bind. On one hand, Honky's evasive reign was becoming an embarrassment, a stain on the prestige of the Intercontinental Championship. On the other hand, he couldn't afford to lose a champion, especially one who was generating such intense heat. It was a true hostage situation. Honky, through his sheer stubbornness and a keen understanding of his leverage, had boxed Vince in. He wasn't just holding the Intercontinental Championship hostage, he was, in a way, holding up the entire mid-card division. The solution to the Honky Tonk Man problem, when it finally arrived, was swift, brutal, and utterly shocking. At SummerSlam 1988, the crowd was buzzing for the highly anticipated Intercontinental Championship match between Honky and Brutus Beefcake. But in a storyline twist, Beefcake was suddenly pulled from the match due to a sneak attack by outlaw Ron Bass. The announcement was made that Honky would face a mystery opponent. Then the arena exploded. A burst of chaotic energy, primal screams, and vibrant neon paint erupted from the backstage area. The Ultimate Warrior, a relatively new but rapidly ascending force of nature, sprinted to the ring, his intensity unmatched. The crowd erupted in a frenzy. The bell rang. Warrior unleashed a flurry of devastating clotheslines, a power slam, and then, in a blink, his signature Warrior splash to secure the pin. 31 seconds. That's all it took. The Honky Tonk Man's record-setting, infuriating, and ultimately legendary 454-day reign as Intercontinental Champion was over. It was a shocking, decisive end to a reign built on avoidance. The Ultimate Warrior, a symbol of pure, unadulterated power, was the nuclear option, the only way to forcefully reclaim what Honky had held captive for so long. It was a solution born out of necessity, a testament to how effectively Honky had manipulated the system. The aftermath of the SummerSlam defeat saw Honky Tonk Man transition into a different role within the federation. He continued to be a prominent heel, forming the tag team Rhythm and Blues with Greg the Hammer Valentine, also managed by Jimmy Hart. Their rock and roll gimmick, complete with a pink Cadillac, was entertaining, but the main event spotlight had dimmed for Honky. He wrapped up his initial Federation career with a stint as a heel color commentator before his departure in January 1991 due to contract disputes. In a later interview, Honky stated that his refusal to drop the title to Savage on a widely viewed show like The Main Event, which at the time garnered 35 million viewers, was about protecting his character. He believed that a televised destruction would have effectively ended his career, especially with Ted Turner's WCW actively trying to recruit talent. He even admits to calling Turner, who advised him not to drop the title on such a massive platform if he wanted to come to WCW. This highlights the genuine leverage he possessed and his astute understanding of the burgeoning wrestling landscape. His eventual clean loss to Warrior, he claims, was a planned scenario, a way to catapult Warrior into the main event picture after Hogan's impending departure, which he had no problem with. This further emphasizes his selective control over his losses. His legacy wasn't built on main events or technical brilliance, but on 454 days of defiance, a reign engineered through loopholes, politics, and sheer obstinance. In an era where control has shifted to corporate contracts and tightly scripted outcomes, Honky Tonk Man's story endures as a rare testament to a time when one man, reviled yet relentless, could hijack the system simply by refusing to play by its rules. Love him or hate him, you have to admit, the Honky Tonk Man held the Federation hostage, and he absolutely got away with it.